Hi, I'm Danny, and I love how versatile horror is as a genre. I would even go as far as to say that horror is the most varied genre in all of fiction. There are several types of subgenres like psychological horror or slashers, but there's also a huge difference between something like Jason X, that is more of a self-aware and dumb movie, and the original Halloween, that's more quiet and better at building up suspense. So even though they're both slashers, they fit different niches. Obviously, not everything is going to be everyone's cup of tea, but one of my personal favorite tools to create tension in a story is to limit how much the audience knows and understands about what is actually happened in said story. The idea of showing only a fraction of what is going on to your audience can, when done right, create a feeling of powerlessness and a fear that what will happen next will be completely unavoidable and unexpected. Enter the Milk series, a duology of video games that I think pull this off exceptionally well. In these games, you get to spend a tragically short amount of time with a deeply troubled person and learn some of their history while also realizing that for everything that you do know, there are lots of things that you'll simply never will. Before we start, I want to say that both of these games deal with some pretty heavy stuff, so please consider this a content warning for discussions of self-harm, suicide, depression, and abuse. If you're particularly sensitive to any of these subjects, maybe reconsider watching this video. Without further ado, let's take a look at the Milk series, its story, and my interpretation. Milk inside a bag of milk inside a bag of milk, which I prefer to call Milk Inside for brevity's sake, is the first game in the series, and it's an extremely simple game in most regards, taking around 15 minutes to complete. However, the way it tells its story and the main character's personality, both of which I'll explore more as the video progresses, are the main reason these games capture the imagination of its fanbase. The game's extremely simple presentation shows itself right from the start. After you select your preferred language, you are greeted by the game's title screen with only one option: Help me buy milk. The game starts in the middle of the street, as a nameless girl is rehearsing what to say when entering a store, showing that she has issues with social situations. This is where we come in as the voice in her head. We can ask her, "Who are you talking to?" To which she replies that she's pretending to be a character in a visual novel, which is a meta element of the game because this is a visual novel. Also notice how you can tell her, "Shut up and go already." As the game continues, you'll be able to select what to say to the girl in most cases, but rude options like this one quickly recontextualize the relationship, as either very one-sided or maybe straight up abusive. Once we get to the store, we run into one of the few other people we see in the game, and they're odd. They seem to have two heads and a beak, but more interestingly, they seem to only speak in one letter, O. The girl becomes convinced that this is some kind of attack on her as she's afraid of that letter. When we ask her why she's afraid of the letter O, she decides to let us know. And honestly, I don't think I could ever explain it better than that. Eventually, we bring the milk to the cashier. There's a funny moment here where the girl actually forgets to pay for the milk, and we can reply to that in 3 different ways. One continues the story while the other two don't. Selecting these options gives us further context into the girl's relationship with her mother. For example, selecting "They hate you" leads to "You're stupid and worthless. You're not even capable of going to the store to get milk. I hope mom throws you out the window. Though even in flight, you'll think it's just a fun ride." The other option leads to a somewhat similar horrible thing to say, and the saddest part for me is that the girl's so shocked by these words that she doesn't even get angry. She just takes it. Walking back home, the girl's several mental health issues have left her exhausted and depressed, so she decides to take a moment to speak to the one reading this, calling back to her visual novel fantasy. Interestingly enough, the voice is very against this, saying that it could harm your recovery if we continue to protest, or if we select 3 of the many rude dialogue options, we'll get the game's bad ending, where the girl decides that we aren't helping at all, and the game ends. So if you want to avoid the bad ending, we let the girl talk to the reader, which basically works as a fourth wall break. The girl places what she calls a mental block on the boys, and then she starts talking to basically us. During this section we can actually type an answer to the girl's comments, but only some words have a unique replay programmed in. When the girl shows us this, and asks us what do we see, the answer the game recognizes is corpse. Right. This is my dad, the girl says. She tells us how her father took his own life and how since that happened, she's only been able to see the world in red and black, which explains the art direction of the game. She truly opens up and even thanks us for helping her buy milk. But she knows that her issues are only getting worse, and she says that her medication is becoming less and less effective. Her only hope is that when she dies, it will be painless. Just as she's about to say more, from here on now things are a lot more quiet. The girl travels back home where, before going in, she hangs over the railing outside of her apartment. No longer under the effect of her medicine, the girl no longer hears anything in her head, so she is now able to just stand around and listen to the silence of the outside world. Finally home, the girl has one last encounter with this monolithic and emotionless being, wearing a mask that only barely looks human. When this being asks if the girl brought the milk, the girl answers, and then the game ends. The fact that the game ends so abruptly without a strong sense of resolution is a big part of what makes the first game such a fascinating experience. And this decision really paid off, seeing as how the game sold enough to have a sequel. But how do you expand on an experience like this without over-explaining what's going on? Let's find out. Milk outside a bag of milk outside a bag of milk, which I'll be calling Milk Outside from now on, is the second part of the story and it takes place right after the first one. The first thing we see is an animated cutscene that retells the events of Milk Inside. One thing you might notice about it is that it doesn't show any of the other characters from the first game besides the girl, leaving it up to our imagination just how accurate the girl's perspective is compared to the outside world. Right as the cutscene is about to end, we can actually see a quick flash of 3 images. The first and third one are the same picture, and they seem to represent the girl finding her father's corpse after he committed suicide. Her hair floating unnaturally and her lack of eyes give the image a creepy vibe, as if finding her father's corpse made her psyche break. We are then taken to the game's menu, and we start the game. Shortly after the game starts, we have another encounter with the girl's mother. While the mother is still shown the same way, this time their interactions are not as peaceful. The mother violently grabs the girl's arm and inserts one of her fingers into her daughter. As the girl spits out white foam, her mother makes the girl promise her to never drink milk again. The meaning of this cutscene is left for us to figure out, but one thing's clear. Milk has a very specific meaning to this family, and while it's never really explained, it will continue to pop up for the remainder of the game. Once in her room, the girl starts thinking about all the pills that she is told that she needs, but she starts to question that idea, so she decides to not take her pills, not only that night, but forever. This is when we, the boys, come in. The girl seems very happy about this reunion, but the boys is a little too cynical for that. It's never clearly stated, but 2 things are implied in this scene. First, the boy seems to be in direct control over the girl's actions, which makes the relationship seem a lot creepier. Also, it's basically stated that the medicine the girl takes is what causes the boys to appear, which is probably why the next thing the boys does is to make the girl cry by calling her, among other things, pathetic. This leads to the girl caving in and taking her medication. And in case it wasn't clear, you're not giving an option for this conversation. You have to do this. The next thing that happens in the story is that the girl decides to just lay down and try to gather her thoughts. She even shuts the boys down a couple of times, like the mind block scene in the first game. The girl thinks that she will be able to better keep track of her thoughts if she imagines them as being fireflies. At first, this is a cute and charming scene, but the girl quickly gets overwhelmed and jumps up screaming at her thoughts, which scares them and they scatter away in her room. The girl is worried about finding her thoughts, but the boy seems more interested in what she was thinking while lying on the ground. The girl says that we should already know that, but if we select, "That's the thing. I have no idea. This is weird," the girl will look at us weirded out or sad, like she doesn't want to talk about it. But we can continue to pressure her, which leads to Once in this bizarre space, the girl's eyes start to itch, and she starts to rub them until she cries. The boy tries to reason with her, but she seems entranced with the idea of ripping her eyelashes off, until the boy decides to offer her milk. The game never gives a specific meaning to any of this. Instead, the girl just mentions that the experience can only be called one thing: death. However, the girl's denial about her own trauma and pain is so strong that she acts as if nothing happened. From now on, the game continues basically the same as if you had selected the other dialogue option. Returning to the game, the girl's room is designed to fit in with her scatterbrained personality. Everything from the dead plants to the blank photographs glued to the wall support this characterization. Under her bedroom sink, we can see several boxes in the ground. Trying to click on this gives us a glitched out effect that is never referred to directly in the game, but according to in-game files, it's supposed to be milk cartons, once again hinting at milk's importance to these characters. To help the girl find the fireflies, we'll need to click on the several spots in her room. Only some of them have fireflies hidden in them, while the others don't reveal much beyond funny and sometimes cute interactions between the characters. Clicking somewhere where a firefly is hiding will lead to conversations where we discover more of the girl's past. All of the firefly spots are hiding something interesting. For example, clicking on the girl's laptop will lead us to learn about the girl's past with the internet. She tries to distract us at first with bizarre metaphors because she doesn't want to talk about it. But if you select the correct option, she'll talk about how she used to enjoy several hobbies and even interacted with several people who share them online, even naming one specific friend. Strangely enough, the girl seems convinced that the people online are nothing more than software pretending to be people, but this is clearly some kind of denial from her part. However, before she can say more, the voice distracts her and she forgets what she was talking about. But she does promise that she'll tell the rest of the story, if we do everything right. Regardless of whether or not we got all the fireflies, once we decide to finish searching, the girl once again says that she's feeling depressed. To make her feel better, the voice recommends that she goes outside for some fresh air, but the girl is scared of someone watching her. In typical boys fashion, the way to convince her is to tell her that no one cares about her that much. Once outside, the girl and the boys talk about how she feels the entire world is lying to her, that her reality is nothing more than a joke. The voice is skeptical and the girl knows that it's probably right, but still, she can't shake the feeling. Then the camera pans up and we see the black sun, an impossible sight the girl is terrified of. But at the same time, she understands that it's part of her daily life. She then sits on the rails and stares at the abyss, an old friend she calls it. Before we start thinking what she might mean by that, she decides to go back in. That is, unless you did everything right. If you previously got the full laptop story, now you'll get the conclusion. Not before the girl telling us that from now on, every word will cause her pain. As she imagines herself falling off the apartment, a visual we should already be familiar with, she continues her story about this one specific person she befriended online, only for that friend to incite an army of people to harass her. Her paranoia and feeling of being watched now expanded to her computer, but just as she's about to say more, she crashes into the ground. If you already did the first death in this playthrough, the girl will say that this is the second time she has experienced death today. When going back inside, she unplugs her laptop and then, once again, continues on as if nothing happened. Now that we're done with everything that needed to be done, the girl finally goes to bed, not without first saying that she will stop taking her medication, mirroring the start of the game. The boys tell her that this means they won't see each other again, but before that, the girl wants to ask a favor of us. Once she's in bed, she admits that she wants the boys to tell her a bedtime story. I can't avoid but feel bad for her, but the only option we have is to say no, and the girl finally falls asleep. So yeah, that's the end of the game. However, depending on several different factors like whether or not you got all the fireflies, you'll get one of 5 endings. So now we'll take a look at each one and try to decipher what they mean for the girl as a character. Suddenly, the girl wakes up. She's at a park where she's met by a little boy called Treska. And this little boy is weird. He talks with the girl as if they're all friends, but she clearly doesn't know him and is actively annoyed by everything he says. In the end, the girl ends up helping Treska go to the store to buy milk. Once they are at the store, Treska is constantly humiliated and treated as a nuisance by everyone. Returning home, the boy tries to make conversation, which the girl is unwilling to do. Then the boy turns around and tells the girl the truth. He tells her that she hasn't helped him at all. The girl wakes up. Known as the shop ending, this is unlocked if you activate the first death, or if you don't meet the requirements for any of the other endings. Because of this could be considered the default ending of the game. This is obviously supposed to be reminiscent of the events of the first game, and what we learn is that the girl absolutely hates the person representing her, so much so that she is unable and unwilling to help him in any meaningful way. There's a scene in the first game when the girl is walking back home where she's almost hit by a truck. This is roughly the same part where the girl gets Treska's bad ending, as it were. I like to interpret this as Treska is actually hit by the truck right before the girl wakes up. This might sound a little fanficky, but the timing of the story matches up, and if you look closely at the last image of Treska we see, you can see how the street lamps behind him create a smile with bleeding eyes, making the whole scene feel wrong, and like something horrible is about to happen. But the girl wakes up, so we don't find out. We see the girl out into the world, texting her thoughts out to a poor pizzeria employee trying to make a sale. Her thoughts, as usual, are very scattered and repetitive, which makes it difficult to follow what she means, but the gist of it is that the girl feels like she is surrounded by nothing, that she's trapped in a void. However, she insists that she doesn't feel good or bad about it, because her head is so full of thoughts that she doesn't need the world. However, this is all denial once again, and as she grows more and more desperate to convince herself that she is okay, she gets hit by an upcoming train. As the chat session expires, the girl wakes up. This is the phone ending, and to get it, make sure not to activate the first death and then click on the girl's phone in the point and click section of the game. And in terms of interpretation, this is the ending I struggled with the most while writing this video, even though it's actually fairly straightforward. The idea is that the girl has turned dependent on her phone, but due to her several issues, her worldview has also turned very pessimistic. And right before she's starting to think the world might not be empty, she gets hit by a train. On an infinitely long concrete pillar, with infinite stairs going around it, the girl stands terrified. She can't remember how long she's been there. She's so scared she's unable to move until her legs start moving against her will. This is due to the super creature, an impossible being without shape that takes control of the girl. Her legs will move. She can only choose to go down or up, so she decides to go downwards. The super creature then starts speaking to the girl in sentences without logic. Before any of it can start to make sense, the girl wakes up. The stairs ending is achieved by not getting all the fireflies and not going outside to the balcony. Basically, this is the ending when you do the bare minimum, and that's what the cutscene represents. This Lovecraftian scenario depicts the girl terrified to move until she's controlled by a higher being that doesn't actually care about her. So she goes on a literal and figurative downward spiral. The voice is the super creature, this shapeless being that makes the girl take action but doesn't actually try to help her. This is the ending, where we fail the girl. The girl is alone, surrounded only by walls and a door. On the other side of the door, strange noises leave the girl paralyzed by fear, but the noises seem to eventually be replaced by a friendly voice. So the girl is now trying to reach for the door, but every time she gets close to it, it gets further and further away from her, until she starts running faster and harder than she has ever done before. The closer she gets to the door, however, the angrier the once friendly voice gets, until she finally reaches it, and the girl is now in a seemingly infinite grass field. The only light in the sky is the moon, and at first it seems that she is alone, until she finds the silhouette. The silhouette seems to scream at her, but doesn't answer any of her questions. The girl eventually decides to go the other direction, but she quickly notices that the silhouette is following her. At first she tries to ignore it, but eventually she trips down and turns around. She sees the silhouette get closer and closer. It then reveals its true form, as several heads and hands come out of nowhere. The silhouette grabs the girl and quickly snaps her neck. The girl is alone, surrounded only by walls and a door. The girl wakes up. To get this one, known as the room and field ending, you'll need to not collect all the fireflies and get the full laptop story that I mentioned before. Taking that into consideration, I think it's fairly evident that this ending is another retelling of the harassment the girl suffered online. At first, we see her isolated and scared of the outside world, until she hears a friendly voice on the other side. So even though it's very difficult for her, she decides to reach out to the voice, even ignoring that it seems to turn hostile towards her. Once in the endless field, which to me feels like the internet, she tries to talk to the silhouettes, these strange figures that are never too far away, always watching and always screaming the one letter we know she is afraid of. She then tries to ignore them, but to no avail. The girl gets harassed, and she ends up where she started, isolated and afraid of the outside world. The girl is in front of her mirror, but there's something different. The girl is getting ready for school for the first time in a while. She still has issues, but she's clearly making an attempt at returning to a more normal life, which is a very important development. We even get a couple of lines from the boys, which appears to be more supportive, and the mother, who we don't see, but I'd be willing to bet that she's not the same monster as before. This seems like an overall improvement, right? Oh no. The same exact scene with the same exact dialogue then repeats, but with the background music and the girl's appearance becoming distorted. We see things like her neck twisting unnaturally to reveal a smile that she didn't have before, or this other girl standing right behind her. All of a sudden, we go back to the happy music, and now the dialogue seems even more optimistic. However, the girl is now completely faceless. Then, the next day, the girl wakes up. The mirror ending is obtained by finding all the fireflies, which makes this the complete opposite to the stairs ending. While that one shows what happens when we fail the girl, this one is what happens when we actually do our best to help her, and the sad part is, it's not that much better. Every time we see a new face, except for the last one, it's mentioned that this is the girl's first day at school, which means that these are all different attempts by the girl to live a more normal life. The last two represent what the girl thinks will happen if she tries again. Notice how in the faceless one, the voice has no lines, meaning the girl is not taking her meds. The reflection is faceless because she has forgotten how much of a lost cause she thinks she is. That's why the last image we see before she wakes up is of her seeing herself, remembering that she doesn't think she deserves happiness. As you probably noticed, they all end with the girl waking up. This is where the game's closing cutscene plays, which is the same regardless of what ending you got. After waking up crying, we see her staring emotionless at the black sun she used to be afraid of. This could imply a positive change. However, if we take a look at the game's soundtrack, the song playing here is called I'll Be Here for a While, possibly implying a more pessimistic interpretation of the girl's life after the game ends. Overall, both games are nothing but a short glimpse at a life constantly in pain. Even when we do learn some of her worst trauma, we never learn everything about the girl, and I don't think we're supposed to. We're just here to try to help her this one time, to make her feel a little better this unimportant day. What happens next, and most of what happens before, is all left to our interpretation. The only thing I can think of after the credits roll is that I hope that the girl is okay. Well, I had absolutely no idea how hard making this video was going to be, especially the writing process, which took forever. So if you're still watching, thank you so much for staying around and listening to me trying to find sense to my feelings about this game. And I hope that you consider liking the video, commenting, and maybe even subscribing. I'm no algorithm expert, but hey, it can't hurt now, can it? But more important than all of that, have a nice day.